Okay, before we get any further, it's a good idea to save our workbook because if something happens, we'll lose all this information here. So to save it, you can see up here on the title bar, you get the generic name, Book 1. When you save it for the first time, it's going to perform what's called a save as, where it's going to ask you two questions. 1, where do you want to save it? And 2, what name do you want to give it? Instead of this generic Book 1. So you can come up here and click on the Save button, and it opens up the Save As window. Unless you didn't watch my earlier training video on how to not go backstage to be able to do the Save As there. In any case, you can watch that training video. So in my case, instead of going backstage, it opens up the Save As window, and it says, where do you want to save it? Well, you got your navigation pane over the left-hand side, and so if I want to be able to save it to my desktop, I can just go ahead and scroll down and expand this PC and go to the desktop. And then on my desktop over in the main window, I've got the exercises folder. So if I want to save it in there, I can double click to go into the folder. And then down below, the name of that workbook is going to be my Spiffy Sales Workbook, because hey, everything we do here at Dreamforce is spiffy. And then just go ahead and click Save. And when you're done, it updates the title bar here from Book 1 to My Spiffy Sales. And so anytime you make any changes down below, like if I change this to 4 and hit enter, and I want to be able to save that, when I come up here and click on the Save button, it's not going to ask me or perform a Save As, where do you want to save it, what name do you want to give it, because now it knows where to save it and what the name is. Now, if you want to make a backup or a copy of this workbook because like you want to keep the original and then you want to make some changes so you can always go back to the original, to make a copy of it, you want to do a Save As. So you can't come up here and click Save because that's not Save As, it's already been saved. It knows its name and knows where it's supposed to be saved. You want to come up here, in my case, and click on the command that I added to the Quick Access toolbar. You can watch my training video on that. We went over that in an earlier video. You can add commands to it and click on Save As. To me, that's a lot faster, or hitting the F12 key, as you can see in the pop-up, to be able to open up the Save As window. In which case it's going to prompt me to find a place to save it and to give it a name. Now if I go ahead and it's in the same place and it's got the same name and I click Save, it'll say, do you want to replace it? In which case I'm like, no, I don't want to replace it. This is going to be my copy. So I can come down here. I can save it in the same place as long as I give it a different name so it doesn't overwrite the original. So there's my Spiffy Sales copy. Click Save. Updates the title bar to the copy. So now I'm in the copy. I'm out of the original My Spiffy Sales. So if I want to be able to open it back up, there's many ways to do it. I can go ahead and close out of Excel completely here. And I can go to my exercises folder on the desktop and double click to open it up. And hey, there they are. The copy and the original, double click to open it up. Now, if you don't want to close out of the entire program, just the workbook, which, as you can see down below, this has many sheets. It doesn't matter if it just has one, it's still referred to as the workbook. But again, if you want to be able to close out of just the workbook and not the program, you can do it one of a couple of ways. You can either come up here and click on the File tab to go backstage and down to Close, and the shell of the program is still open, but the workbook has been closed. You can do it that way, or, now speaking of other ways to open up that workbook again, instead of, minimizing this down to the taskbar, closing out, and going to the exercises folder, you can come down below, as we mentioned in an earlier video, and right-click on the Excel program to get a jump list. And hooey, look at all those recents here. And there's My Spiffy Sales, the most recent next to the copy of it. And I can pin that up to the jump list, as we covered in an earlier training video. But there's that way. Or you can, with the program open, click on the File tab to go backstage, and Open is selected by default. And you can see Recent selected by default, and then over to the right-hand side, there's your other jump list, but within the program here. So I don't have anything pinned, but if I hover down below, you can see that I can pin it if it's something that I want to always stay here, no matter how many other workbooks I open up, so it doesn't eventually roll off if I don't open it up as one of the most recent ones. So same thing with the jump list. You got, as you right-click down here on the program, as you see here. So what I opened up recently is My Spiffy Sales, then it's My Spiffy Sales copy. Maybe we can go ahead and do a demonstration and pin it. It's up in its own section, it'll always be there. Then go ahead and click on it to open it up, and hey, it's opened back up. And then if you want to use shortcut keys to close out of the workbook here, but not out of the program, Control W. Now is the W for workbook or Windows? In any case, it's closed out. And then to bring it back open, like I said, you can go backstage. And if it's not one of the most recent ones, let me go ahead and unpin this. Then you're going to have to go ahead and browse for it. Click on Browse. Opens up the Open window, which, by the way, you can add the Open command to the Quick Access toolbar, so you don't have to go backstage to be able to open the Open window through clicking on the Browse button. And go to your Exercises folder, and it's spiffy. Double click. There we go. Cool. Okay, which one of these is not like the other? Because what you're looking at is two different versions or Excel files that were created in different versions of Excel. Was this the earlier one or the latest? Well, it's the earlier one. Since I gave it away, you can see when I hover over it here, in the pop-up, it was created in an earlier version of Microsoft Excel, either 97, 2000, 2002, or 2003, as opposed to when you hover over the latest version, which could be 2007, because beginning in 2007, it added the extra X on the extension here. Okay, let me back up here. You've got the name of the file, and then you have a dot and what's known as the extension. This extension tells the operating system what program to open up this file in, and both of them begin with XLS, so it'll open up in the Excel workbook. Now, the one with the extra X chromosome on the end, or the extra X on the extension, that was done with the XML language, a more stabler language here. So you get smaller file sizes, and also, well, less likely you're going to have a corrupt file and lose your data, as opposed to the earlier version, just the XLS. And if you're wondering, how in the world can you see those? Because when you download my exercises to your computer, and you don't see the extra, well, the extension beyond your original name here, you can watch my Windows training video on extensions, and I'll show you how you can go ahead and view them, because by default they're not turned on. Because if you delete the extension here when you're renaming the file and you don't have the .xls or .xlsx, and you'll change the nature of what program to open up that file in, and you're like, what the heck happened? In any case, again, you can watch my Windows training video on extensions. So let's go ahead and convert this to the latest version of Excel. So somebody's still working in that earlier version, and you want to be able to take that, make it yours by being able to use the latest features of Excel 2019 and have a more stable file and a smaller file size. Then let's go ahead and double click to open it up. Opens up in Excel. It doesn't have a problem with that. And you can see up here in the title bar that it's in compatibility mode, because there may be things that it's not compatible with in the latest version of Excel. Things may have been done away, or other things in Excel are not compatible with the earlier version. So to be able to convert it, come over here, click on the File tab, and Info selected by default. There it is. It says right here, some new features are disabled to prevent problems when working with previous versions of Office. Converting this file will enable these features, but may result in layout changes, so you might get some changes there. And so if you ever want to figure out if you're in the latest version of Excel, 2019 that is, then come back here, and if you get the Convert option, go ahead and click on it. And it says this action converts the workbook to the current file format, which allows you to use new features, well, pretty much what we talked about. Reduces the file size. The original workbook will be deleted and cannot be restored after this conversion. Oh my goodness, are you okay with that? If not, then you want to make a backup of this before you actually go ahead and click OK, because it's going to be toast. And it says the workbook conversion has taken place. Do you want to go ahead and close and reopen the workbook now with that conversion? Go ahead and say yes, and it reopens it, and it's got that extension there, the extra X. Cool. So if I close out of this and go back to the desktop, oh, it jumped over here. Let me click and drag. It used to be right next to its neighbor right there, and it's got the extra X. And you can see that the icon doesn't look funny anymore, or that older version of icon, because now it's converted to the latest version of Excel 2019. What you're looking at here is an Excel spreadsheet that I want to be able to use the Compatibility Checker to check to see if the features that I use in here, which include these data bars that graphically represent the numbers in each cell, if they're supported. And if they're not supported, well, I can either try to fix it, or I can send it on but know that the user who receives it at the other end, who has an earlier version of Excel, probably won't be able to view the newer 2019 formatting, or the colors may be off a bit, and the shapes, smart art, converted to pictures where they can't make any changes to it. So to find out if this is going to be compatible with earlier versions of Excel, just come up here, click on the File tab to go backstage. Info selected by default. Come down here to check for issues. Click on the arrow, and it's right there. Check for features not supported by earlier versions of Excel. Click on it, and it opens up, and it says if the workbook is saved in an earlier file format or opened in an earlier version of Excel, the listed features will not be available. So you get significant loss of functionality, but for which version? Over here to the right, it tells you anything that was created in Excel 97, 2000, 2002, or 2003. And it says here some cells in this workbook use conditional formatting types like data bars, and that's what I got here. And these formatting types won't show in earlier versions of Excel. And it tells you the location, which is on sheet 1, and what we're using, the feature conditional formatting. So you can see I got a bunch of other sheets here that it helps me to identify where to go, at least it's on sheet 1. And then I can scroll down and find out what else is going on. Like one or more of the cells in this workbook contain a data bar rule that uses a negative value setting. These data bars will not be supported in earlier versions of Excel. Again, the location, sheet 1, conditional formatting. Not only is it not compatible with 97 through 2003, but also 2007. Or up above, it was just 97 through 2003. So let me go ahead and scroll down. And we got the last one. It's a minor loss of fidelity. In fact, if you look at this, these little signs, you got the X, it's like, whoa, you're not going to get anywhere with this. And the other one where it's like, okay, warning. In any case, it says one or more cells in the workbook contain a data bar rule that uses a fill, border, or bar direction going horizontally here. And these data bars will not be supported in earlier versions, including Excel 2007. Now, if you just want to focus on a particular version of Excel to see if it has any issues, because maybe there's tons of them, and you got a friend who maybe uses Excel 2010, and you don't want to scroll through all this, you can click on the drop-down arrow and uncheck all the other versions except Excel 2010. So uncheck, click, uncheck. Okay, I don't have to go any further because it's completely blank here. So it'll work for 2010, 2013, and 2016. Great. So I can go ahead and close out and either fix this so I don't include the conditional formatting, the data bars, clean it up, or even remove them, and then do a compatibility check again to see if I get any other issues, or go ahead and send it on knowing that the other person who gets it in an earlier version like 2002 probably won't be able to see these data bars at all. And so for the sake of this training video, let me go ahead and convert it back into an earlier version and then open up in Excel 2019 in compatibility mode. It will recognize the data bars, but they won't look as crisp as what you see here. So for example, to go ahead and save it as an earlier version, I can come up here on the Quick Access toolbar, click on my Save As command, come down below and change the type from the Excel workbook with the extension .xlsx, and go to the earlier version of workbook, which is just the XLS, and that's 97 through 2003. Select it, and then go ahead and click Save, and then it opens it up again as a final warning saying, hey, whoa, wait a second. Some things, this person that you're going to be converting it to their version and sending it on to won't be able to see or actually work with. If you're okay with it, then just go ahead and click Continue, and that's it. So I can go ahead and close out. And there's the original file on the desktop, and here's the converted version. And again, in an earlier training video, which one of these is not like the other? They're different, right? And you can see by looking at the extension, which I talked about, is it tells the operating system what program to open up the file in. So there's your name, but the .xls or anything that comes after the dot, it's the extended name or the extension of that file. So again, it can tell the operating system, hey, I'm going to be opened up in this program. So you can watch my Windows training video on extensions to learn more about it, like if you want to see it, or be able to change the extension so it can open up in the appropriate program, in case if you deleted it or messed with it, in any case. So there's the earlier version, right, of the original version. So if I go ahead and double click on this, it'll open up in Excel 2019, but is there going to be any loss? Double click. Okay, it recognizes the data bars. It can see it, and you can see up here in the title bar it's in compatibility mode, but it's not as crisp or as clear as the original version. So that ain't going to work if you want it crisp and clear. So the only other option is, let me go ahead and close out, because when you go back to the original version, click off, you see how crisp and sharp that is? Oh, that looks nice. Then you want to remove it. So if I go ahead and remove it, click on, well, up here on the Home tab in the Styles group, click on Conditional Formatting, and I'm going to go down to Manage Rules, And I'm going to go ahead and select whatever's on this worksheet, which is the data bar, and delete the rule and click OK. Now it's gone. Let's see if it's compatible now with an earlier version of Excel. So let's go ahead and click on Save As. Change the Save As type to, again, that earlier version. Select it, and then go ahead and click Save. It'll overwrite the original unless I go ahead and say no, when I converted it. Let's make this a copy of the original conversion to an earlier version of Excel and click Save. No problem. Didn't open up the compatibility checker at all, did it? No. And so even if you came backstage and you went from info down to check for issues, and you check compatibility, no issues were found. Because when it comes to simple text, data, things like that, not fancy formats like data bars or conditional formatting, all versions of Excel should be happy. It's only when it comes into different styles, formats, features, or fancier features that it chokes, and the other user who tries to open it up in their earlier version of Excel either may not be able to see it, or it may not be as clear or sharp, or may not be able to use, because they don't have the features in the earlier version, to be able to update whatever changes you made with the latest version using that feature. Now, if you need some help and you want to do your own research, because I'm not available, I do got to eat and sleep. In any case, you can come up here and go to the Tell Me What You Want to Do, What You Really Want to Do feature, and click inside and type in a keyword, like print. We'll keep it simple. It finds the best match, which is an action that you can hover over the arrow and it opens up and allows you to choose from 1 of 3 actions, like the quick print. You go over and click on that, it's going to automatically print, and I don't have anything on my worksheet. Go to the printer. Or you can perform the actions down below, and you can go ahead and click print. It'll print it, print the guidelines, or you can choose one of these other options here, like setting the print area. So when you go to it, you can come over here and click on Set Print Area. So you want to make sure that you select a range, and before you go ahead and click on Set Print Area, which we'll talk about in a later training video. But if you don't want to perform any of these actions, the commands, which is the same command that you can put on your quick access toolbar or find on one of the tabs on the ribbon in a group, you can also get extra help like print. What does that mean? And you can hover over it and it says, hey, you can print a worksheet or a workbook. Go ahead and click on it, opens up the task pane over to the right so you can read more about it. Print a worksheet or workbook. You can print an entire or partial worksheet, and you can scroll down and go, oh, there's the steps. Go to File, there's File, and then go down to Print, or you can use the shortcut keys Control-P. And while you're here, you can actually type in some more keywords to search in the Help feature here, or you can go ahead and close out. Come back up, and let's do it again. Print, see what else is available. You can get more results, or you can do a smart lookup on Print. So when you click on the smart lookup, in the previous version of Excel, it actually searched the internet, the Bing search engine, but now it's called Intelligent Services. Ooh, getting a little AI, artificial intelligence. That could be spooky. So to let Office get web results for your highlighted text, you can turn on now. In fact, let me go ahead and I'll click and drag, and I ought to be able to scroll down. Let me click and drag. Intelligent Services works across all Office apps to help you be more productive. To provide intelligent services, Office needs to be able to collect your search terms and document content. Document content? Ouch. Let's go ahead and click on Turn On. And there we go. You can explore or define it. So when I'm exploring print, I can scroll down, and it tells me about this print. A quarterly journal of the graphic arts was a limited edition. Okay, oh, that's exploring. And it just pulls in whatever it thinks that you're trying to look for. So there it is. Or you can define it and say, okay, what is the definition of print? A verb, third person, present. Prints, past tense, printed, past. Okay, you get the idea. You can also click on listen to the pronunciation.
Print.
Oh, you hear that?
Print.
Oh, that was pronounced just fabulous. In any case, if everything looks grisly and you're done with it, go ahead and close out. Oh, and by the way, if you want to turn off the artificial intelligence, come with me, good neighbor. Click on File, go backstage, and let me go down to Options. Click on that. And then on the General tab, go ahead and scroll all the way down to the bottom. And it's right there, Office Intelligent Services. You want to enable it, uncheck it, click OK. So when I come back up here and I type in print, I come down to do a smart lookup on print. You see it was turned off. So there you go. What you're looking at here is my camping gear sales spreadsheet for the year 2019, well, at least the first 4 months. But I also want to keep track of it by employee, so I added their employee ID. So I got this crosstab thing going on here. We're at this intersection. For January, for that employee, he's got sales of over $10,000. And so what I wanted to do is I want to get a total for the month of January, so I added a label over to the left-hand side that says this row, well, from this point forward, is going to be the totals for each of the months of, well, January, February, March, and April. So right now I want to enter in a formula for January that's going to add up all these cells here by each employee for that month. So with it selected, go ahead and hit the equals key on the keyboard to let Excel know that we want to enter in a formula. And then type in the first cell reference, which is going to be in column C. In fact, for January, they're all going to be in column C, but different rows. So we'll type in C, and then it brings up a list of all these functions. Just ignore that for now. We'll cover that later on. And so it's column C, and it's going to be row 7. So type in 7. And you don't have to do uppercase. You can just go ahead and type it in and save yourself an extra, well, using the pinky for the shift key, because after I hit enter, it'll automatically put the letters in uppercase. So save yourself some time there. So C7. And then I want to, well, you can see it's highlighted to let you know that that's the cell that's been referenced. In case if you're like, C7, is that right? Yeah, that's the one I want. Unless you got it memorized, but the highlight certainly graphically helps me identify which cell that I'm including in the formula. In any case, to go on, hit plus on the keyboard to say that now you want to add another cell. Same column, different row, row 8. So C8, and hey, now we get another color so you can compare and contrast between the two, knowing that it's not a selected range, but they're two different cell references within that formula. So then we can go ahead and hit plus, and let's do C10. Oopsie doodle, I made a mistake. I went and skipped over C9. Well, you can hover over the border of that cell that's currently selected until you can see a 4-way arrow, and you can click and drag it up, and it goes to C9. Ooh, isn't that fancy? In any case, I don't want to get too complex on this. Let's keep it simple. Let's go back because I want to show you that when you hit enter and you're like, wait a second, that number doesn't look correct. And with such a simple formula, you can get a little bit of help by using the status bar down below. If you want to go ahead and click and drag and select your range, down below it gives you some of the stats like the average of what you have selected, the total cells that are counted up that contain numbers, and then the sum, which should be over 86,000. So something's not right. So what you can do is you can go back and select it, and it just displays the value. If you want to see the formula, then look up here in the formula bar. That's one way to see it. And you can see that we're missing, well, plus C9 to plus C10. So if you click inside of it, you can make your changes up there. The moment you click inside of it, you can see it highlights the cells that we already have, and you can see that, oh, we're missing C9. So we can come back and click, put our cursor before C10 and do C9 plus, and it's got it selected now. Everything looks grizzly. Hit enter. Cool, over 86,000. You can do it that way, or you can go ahead and select it and then double click in it, and you won't have to go up to the formula bar. You can just make the changes there. It removes the resultant value of the formula and shows you the formula where you can go ahead and make your changes. Now when you hit the enter key on the keyboard, it goes down a row. If you want to stay in the same cell, when you double click and you're making changes, you can come up here and click on enter. When you click on enter, it accepts what you have there but stays in the same cell. So double click. You can also click cancel and it stays in the same cell, or you can hit the escape key on the keyboard. And that can be very helpful because if you're in here and you're clicking around and you're like, wait, I wanted to click off so I can get out of it. Well, you're not getting out of it, you're making a bigger mess. And you can see here that now it wants to add E10, but it's not adding it correctly because we don't have the plus symbol in between. In any case, you find yourself in a mess, hit the escape key, and it goes back to the default. Clears it out, or just go ahead and click the cancel button here. Okay, let's do it again, but slightly different when it comes to getting the total for the month of February. Go ahead and select in the next cell, hit equals on the keyboard, and instead of typing it in, since it's right there, how about if we just go ahead and select it? It'll automatically add it in for us. Oh, and it put it in uppercase. Like I said, let me hit the escape key to get out. When we go back here, everything that was lowercase is now uppercase. So let's come back. In any case, pun intended, hit equals, and then go up and select it. And you can see D7 here. And then hit plus, select the next cell, hit plus, hit the next cell, plus, next. Now, That works great when the cells are pretty close to each other, but if you have like a cell way off in Booney land, like column Z, well, I don't want to scroll all the way over to column Z to select it and then can scroll all the way back to be able to see where I'm at. That's why it's good to know that you can actually enter in the reference here, type it in, and not have to be there visibly in front of you to select it, because scrolling, that's too much. In any case, everything's there, looks grisly. Let's go ahead and hit enter. Fabulous. Now the next thing that you can do is you can copy and paste your formulas, as long as you've got a correctly built database, one that looks organized, because Excel likes organization to help you with your work. So for example, what I mean by copying and pasting is that if I go ahead and take this formula, you can see up there, and I copy it by hitting Control-C, which are the shortcut keys, Control-C, and you get this highlighted. You get little lines going around it. Looks like marching ants to me. In any case, it means it's active. It's hot now. And you can also come up here on the Home tab and go to the Clipboard group and click on the Copy button. And you can see in the pop-up Control-C. That works. And then go to the next cell, well, for the column March, and paste it. And you can use the shortcut keys, Control-V as in Victor, to paste, or you can come up here on the Home tab to the Clipboard and click on, well, you can see the pop-up Control-V, click on Paste, and it'll paste it. Now, what does it paste? Does it paste the value or the formula? It's got to be the formula because these numbers are not the same. And you can see the ants are still marching around. In other words, you can keep pasting and pasting and pasting until the cows come home, or until you can go ahead and get out of this copy mode. How do you get out of it? Hit the Escape key, and you get no more selection or marching ants. And so with the cell selected here, what do you get? Look up in the formula bar, and is it the same formula as it has in, well, cell D12? No, because now we're in a new column, E. So it's dynamic. It actually has a pattern it can base upon because it's organized here, where we have column after column within the same range of data that Excel can figure out and go, oh, yeah, let's go ahead and move it over when you copy and paste, give it the same formula as far as adding up a cell, but we're in a new column. So that's pretty cool. As opposed to, well, having your data here, 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 all over the place and going, okay, the value is going to be in this cell. So you do all this to select it, to enter it, and then copy it and paste it to another cell that has its values scattered all over the place. That's not organized. In a later training video, I'll go over the different errors when it comes to building a database. Well, I say errors if you want to use Excel's features and get its help to quickly, when it comes to sorting or doing things like this, copying and pasting, to limit your workload here and let Excel do most of the work, then you want to watch that video. In any case, once it's over, you can see it's updated the formula to the new column E. And another shortcut, instead of just copying and pasting, is using the autofill handle. The autofill handle is in the bottom right-hand corner of any cell, and in this case it's this one. You can see if you select any other cell, it's got that green little square. Let me go ahead and select this one. When you hover over it, you see my white cross? It goes from selecting cells. If you hover over the border, you get a four-way arrow to moving cells to the lower right-hand corner to a black cross, which is the autofill handle that when you click and drag, in this case, when I drag it over to the right, it's going to copy the contents of the cell and paste it over to the right-hand side. Ooh, isn't that cool? Well, did it work? Let's see. Are those numbers accurate? Select it, look up here in the formula bar, and instead of column E, it now has F. Row 7 right here through row 10. It works out. Cool. And so you can do that when you have, well, it organized like this and the columns are adjacent, that you want to go ahead and do a quick copy and paste. If you don't want to use the shortcut keys, just select, click and drag the black cross there over to the right and you're done. We'll cover the autofill handle in greater detail in a later training video. You do get a tag, some options after you use the autofill handle. You can click on, take a look at. You can just copy the cells, or if you have formatting that's been applied to here, like, well, B for bold, and let me come up here and make it red, and I click and drag the autofill handle over, I can say, you know what? Let me click on its tag and say, I want to fill it without the formatting. I just want that highlighted. In any case, I digress. We'll cover this in greater detail in a later training video. Just want to whet your appetite there, and let me hit undo a couple of times to get back to the regular format. Next, let's go ahead and do the monthly average. Now the average is, well, for the range here, the sales in January. Since we already have the total, we could go ahead and have the formula equal the total and divide it by the number of salespeople, or the different numbers in here, to get the average between all 4 sales reps. So we can hit equals and select the total here, and divided by is the /, which is on the keypad. It's next to the number lock key, and you want to type in 4 and hit enter. Is that the average? Well, when it comes to the average, you can verify this by looking down below on the status bar. If you go ahead and select the range and go down here, and if you don't see the average on the status bar, and you can see it checks out, 21,000, well, over 21,000, there you go, over 21,000. You can right click anywhere on the status bar, and there you go, average. If it's not checked, then you won't see it. Click off, it's not there. Oh, horrifying. Let's go back to average, click off, and hey, we're back. So that worked out well. You can do it that way, or let me go ahead and go to the next cell here for the average that we want to get for February. And let's do what we did before. Let's go ahead and hit equals so we can let Excel know that we're going to enter in a formula, and go ahead and select the first cell, and we want to add up the next cell, add up the next cell, hit the plus sign on the keyboard, add the next cell, and then we want to divide that by 4, right? Okay, something's not right about this formula. If you remember back in your algebra days, it wants to do division and multiplication first before it does any addition or subtraction. So it's going to take cell D4, divide it by 4, and then add up the remainder of the cells there. And that's not going to give us the average, right? Well, not the correct average. So what we want to do is we want to put in what's called the order of operation. In other words, use parentheses to say, look, add before you divide. To do that, you want to come in here at the beginning of the formula, just after the equal sign, and add in open parentheses, and then just before the division, which is that /, and close it. So the order of operation is to do what's in the parentheses first, and then once it adds everything up, then take the total and divide it by 4. Sound cool? Alrighty, hit enter, and is that right? Select the range, let's double check. Over 12,000, over 12,000, great, it worked out. Now we already know how to copy and paste, so if you want, we can just go ahead and select this cell and use the autofill handle, lower right hand corner, that green square, get the black cross, click and drag over, instead of 1 but 2 cells, let go, and there's the average for March and April. Let's go back to March, select the range, over 27,000, boom, got it. For April, select it, over 15,000, that's over 15,000, great. Now you don't have to have cells that contain numbers to perform a calculation. You can just go ahead and do it off on your own. Like for example, select a blank cell and do, let's see, equals, what's 200 minus 1? Just make sure you put the equal sign in so it knows that you want to get a calculation. That's your formula, hit enter, and it's 199. Now we know how to do division, so if I come over here and do equals 6 divided by 2, that will give us 3. But for multiplication, equals, let's do 3 times, use the asterisk, 3, that's for multiplication, hit enter, and it gives us 9. So you can do that, you can do a mix of it, you can say, well, within this formula, up in the formula bar, equals 200 minus 1, and you can say also minus or add, and then select a cell that contains a number in it, and get a mixture of both. And then to get back out of it, hit the escape key, and we're good. Now to introduce you to the functions, the most basic functions that I want to go over are the sum and average. The sum is just like it sounds. It wants to sum up or add up a range of cells. Like over here for each employee, I want to get the total for, well, this employee for the sales that that person made for the months of January through April over into the cell with a label up at the top for that column as total. So that way when I get some numbers here, I'm like, what are these numbers about? Oh, it's the total. And because it corresponds in a row that has the employee ID, I assume it's going to be for that employee. Otherwise, I better rebuild my database and make sure I understand what's going on. And so this is the way I'm going to structure it. So to go ahead and add up that range, let's use the sum function. You can either type in equals to put it in formula, or in this case function mode, and type in the letter S. It brings up a list of functions, and we're looking for sum. And in fact, you can see the left-hand side, well, it's kind of blurry. It's got an F and X, so the F is for function. So you can go ahead and scroll down to find the sum function, or you can do the process of elimination by narrowing the search by typing in additional letters here. So it goes down to SU. Well, there it is, sum. You can stop right there and then just go ahead and double-click on it to pop open the function. You can see the syntax down below that says, okay, here's the sum function. Now, in the first argument here is going to be a range. Number 1, it could be any range that you select. And then if you want to add additional ranges, include additional ranges that are not adjacent, then you can hit comma and select another range over here, comma, select another range, well, wherever. And then when you're done, hit the Enter key on the keyboard. But I want to keep it simple, so what I want to do is I want to go ahead and select the range over here of January through April on this row for that employee ID. So you can go ahead and click and drag to select the range. And you'll notice over here it started with C7 and it ends with F7. It's in the same row, 7, but different columns. And the colon means through. So C7, column C through F. Same row, 7. And if you made a mistake, of course, you can go ahead and hover over the border of the range that's selected until you can see a 4-way arrow and click and drag and move it around, as we discussed in an earlier training video here. I'm going to go ahead and move it back. And you can also, if you want to include additional adjacent cells, then you can hover over any one of these little squares here. Those are the resizing handles. When you hover over it, you'll get 2 black arrows pointing in opposite directions. That's the resizing handle, at least for the bottom right-hand corner. You can click and drag and select whatever range you want that suits your fancy, and then go ahead and hit Enter. If you hit comma, then it has that as static, and it goes to the next argument that's in bold that says, okay, now select another range. Then go ahead and click and drag and select another range. Hit comma and select another range. I mean, we're just going crazy. It doesn't make sense, at least for what I want. I just want the total for this row here for that employee, but nonetheless you can do it. So if I don't want to make any more of an issue here, I can hit the backspace key and reselect it, or just hit the escape key and let's start over again. Equals SUM, and instead of double clicking on it, since it's highlighted, you can just go ahead and hit the tab key. But before I do that, you see when it's highlighted, it gives you a synopsis of it. This function adds all the numbers up in a range of cells. Well, that's nice. So that fits the bill. Let's go ahead and hit the tab key, pops open the function. Go ahead and click and drag to select your range. And it's nice because the range is selectable within the view here, but if it wasn't, and it's in column Z, row 50,000, well, if you remember exactly the range, you can just type it in here and then hit Enter, because I'm not going to scroll all the way over to column Z down to 50,000. That would just be crazy. And let's go ahead and hit Enter, and there you go. Now, what's this green little triangle in the upper left-hand corner? What's that about? Go ahead and select the cell. You get a little smart tag, an indicator, gives you a warning. And when you hover over it, the synopsis says the formula in the cell refers to a range that has additional numbers adjacent to it. Did you know that? Of course we did. This is the range that we want, but there are numbers to the left, which is the employee ID, and there's numbers below it. So it's like, have you included everything? We're not sure. Excel's trying to help you out. So if you go back and you select it, and you hover over it, and you click on the drop-down arrow, well, you get a shorter explanation here. Formula omits adjacent cells. Okay. You can go ahead and ignore the error, in which case it gets rid of that little green triangle, so you're not bothered by it anymore. Or if you get a lot of those green triangles and that really bothers you, you can turn the feature off by going backstage, coming up here, clicking on the File tab, and going all the way down to Options. And then you want to click on the Formulas category, and you want to go down to Error Checking, and you can see Enable Background Error Checking. Just uncheck it and click OK, and you won't get those green little triangles anymore. In addition, you can have a color besides green that represents those errors. If you want it red, great, go ahead and choose your color. Or, well, let me check it again. You can reset the ignored errors. So if you get going along, you're ignoring, you're like, oopsie doodle, I shouldn't be ignoring those. Oh, what were those cells that contain those errors? Go ahead and click Reset, click OK, and they'll pop back. Now before I go ahead and do that and click OK, up at the top here, let's go to the calculation options. As kind of a little sidebar, that you got the workbook calculations. Now by default, yours should probably say automatic. If it doesn't, go ahead and read that little pop-up. It says when automatic calculation is enabled, Excel recalculates the workbook automatically each time a value affecting a formula changes. So in other words, let me click and drag the title bar of this window over. You got all these cells that this cell or this formula is dependent upon. So if I change and update the cells for January for this employee to $1, that should automatically, at least in my opinion, update that. But it's not going to because it's manual. So this could be helpful if you don't want to update it automatically because you've got some sort of audit going on where you can update it, you got to enter in the numbers, but you don't want to lose track of what the original number was. Until that is, as you can see over here, that you save the workbook. Once you save it, it'll automatically do the recalculation for you and update it based upon, well, these cells here that the formula includes. So, well, I can go ahead and check automatic in any case. keep that in mind. And then click Okie dokie, and it's back again, that green little triangle. Oh, and so if I come over here and I change it to $1, it should update the monthly total automatically for January 1, hit enter, and it does. I like that, but for audit purposes, maybe I can't do that and lose track of the original number until I'm ready and I click save. In any case, let me hit undo to go back, and we'll continue on here. Let's go ahead and do this again. Let's type in equals sum, and if you don't want to, pop open the function here by hitting the tab key, you can continue on, and you can leave it in lowercase. When you hit enter, a little butler will come in and put it in uppercase, the sum function, so just keep typing. Don't use the shift key. And then go ahead and type in the range of, well, for this employee, it's going to be column C to column F, but in the same row, 8. So let's type in C, 8, and it's got it highlighted so I know I'm in the right row. And then we do colon, which is through, and then now we got to update it to the next, well, to the last column F, and same row 8, and there it is, through. Fabulous. Everything's lowercase. Just go ahead and hit enter, and it puts it all in uppercase here. And is it accurate? Is that the total? Again, you can select the range, come down here to the total, 72,000, 72,000 and some change. Great. Let's go ahead and do it another way here. So when you type in equals, like I said, you get sum, and you can see the little fx there for function. Let me hit the escape key on the keyboard a couple of times. You can also come up here, and there's the fx to insert a function, or you can come up here on the formulas bar and go to the function library and insert a function. And why would you want to do this? Oh, you can see in the pop-up, Shift F3 is the shortcut keys. Why would you want to do it this way? For me, I prefer typing it in. It's a lot faster, but if you want a little bit more detail of what the function's about, well, let's just come down here and click on the insert function. It opens it up, and you can go ahead and search for it. Unless it's one that you've most recently used, as it says here, the sum function. You can click on the drop-down arrow and say, well, the function I'm looking for is date and time. And you can go through here, find like the day function, and go down below. It shows you the syntax with the argument inside, and it tells you what it's about. Returns the day of the month, a number from 1 to 31. Ooh, that's fancy. And you can go ahead and do it that way. Or if you're not sure what category it's in, you can do one of two things. You can select all, and it includes all the functions. Just scroll down until you find the S's for sum. That's one way. Or you can come up here and it says type a brief description of what you want to do and click go. That's a little bit dangerous, but if I can type in what I'm looking for, sum, summary, and click go, well, it brought it up, but it says rephrase your question, but in any case, I can do, how about average? I want to do an average, click go. And it recommends a lot of different average functions. Well, z-test, what's that about? Returns the one-tailed p-value of a z-test. Oh, great, okay. And you can do it any one of those ways. So let me go back and let's just go to the most recently used, which is the sum function. Double click, and it opens up the function arguments window. Now in this window, right here, let me click and drag the title bar down because it's in the way. It's selecting the column H7 through H8. But that's not what I want. It just sees adjacent numbers and it's pulling those in. So you can do one of a couple of things to get the correct number. You can either go ahead and type it in, or the correct range that is, which is going to be, well, okay, row 9, column C, C9 through F9. So go ahead and type it in, C9 colon, which means through F9. And then you can validate that by looking over here, and it's pulling in those range of numbers. So 19,210, 19,210, there you go, 15,000, 15,000, great. Well, and also down below you get the total for that range for these sum functions, 71,000 plus. You can do it that way, or you can go ahead and let's delete it and click on the collapsible dialog box, because when you click on it, it collapses to allow you to move around here unimpeded. Well, at least this being smaller, and go ahead and click and drag to select it, and you can see it right there what you have selected, as well as the marching ants going around it. And then you can either go ahead and click on the expand button to pop it back open, and then click OK if you're okay with that, or let me collapse it again. You can just hit the enter key on the keyboard to pop it back open. So there's one selection. If you want to include others in that syntax in the next argument, which is number 2, you can collapse that and choose another range here, then hit enter to pop it back open. And then you've got your ranges here, 2 separate ranges, and then the total for those 2 separate ranges. But I don't want to do that. I want to keep it simple and just include one range. Why would you want to do it this way? Well, you get a bit more help when there's some new functions and explanations, as you can see down below, of what the function is going to do. And you can get some live stats over to the right-hand side about what you have selected, as in this case, as well as the output, and see if that's what you're expecting. And then when you're finished, you can go ahead and click OK, and there you go. Now, in addition to the insert functions that you have up here, it's also broken down by category without having to open up the insert function in that window to see it in those different categories as we went over. You also got financial, or the functions there, text, logical, date and time, again the day function there, cool. You can do that, or let me go down to the next cell and do our last range here and show you the auto sum. You can go ahead and click on the drop down arrow and it will automatically sum up a range of cells. You can also get the average of a range, and what that does is when I click sum, automatically selects the range, well, the adjacent cells, but we don't want that range. But to get the correct range, all we have to do is go ahead and click and drag, and it'll update and select the correct range, and whoo-wee, that's really fast, right? Just go ahead and click that, hit enter, automatically sums up the range. I just had to click and drag after I clicked on auto sum. Click on it again, and ooh, I can get the auto sum of the total here. Let me hit the escape key to back out. And like I said, you can also do it for the average. If you want to come back up here and click on the drop down arrow and get the average, puts in the average function, it selects an adjacent cell, and we don't want the average of one cell, we want the average of this range right here. So average is C7 through F7, hit enter, great. Now, as you recall, you can copy and paste the formula or use the autofill handle that we covered in an earlier training video by hovering over the bottom right hand corner. You get the black cross, you can double click really fast, and it'll automatically fill in the rest of the formula. Now that double click on the lower right hand corner of the black autofill handle only works when you're in a column. It doesn't work when you're trying to go from left to right. So as I'll show you here, let me delete this range here, come over here and double click, see it goes down. It doesn't go from left to right, so don't do that. Let me hit undo a couple of times. So that's a quick way to quickly autofill in everything down below. Or you can do it the long way. You can copy and paste, and then copy the formula and paste it. Now let's make sure that it's all correct. We have different numbers, so that's a good indicator because these are different numbers here. And so selecting the cell up here in the formula bar, it's not row 7, is it? Which was the original row here. It's row 8. So it's dynamic. And when we copy and paste, it updates it relative to the new position. And we'll talk about relative and absolute references in a later training video. Right here we want to keep it simple. Then the new row is 9. The next row should be 10. Yep, everything looks good. And of course you can always go ahead and select the range, and at least for these simple functions, go down below and verify that of the selected range we've got 23,000 and well over 23,000. There we go, we got a match. Now with all my training videos, I recommend that you watch all of them, because more than likely in most of my training videos I do throw in extra tidbits, tricks, and shortcuts. Like in the previous training video on sum and average, that was the introduction training video to functions and the many different ways you can insert functions and get help on your functions. Assuming that you've seen that, I don't want to repeat it, so from here on out when it comes to inserting or learning new functions, I'm just going to do it the simplest way, well that is for me, when it comes to inserting a function. So in this video, I'm going to go over the minimum and maximum functions, and it's just like you see it here, the labels. The minimum is the lowest in a range of numbers. So I'm looking at the cells for the range of January. I want to find out what the lowest cell was, and I could eyeball and go, oh well, it's just over $10,000. And the highest, or the maximum, which is the maximum function, is over $35,000. But you can imagine if you had a huge range, you don't want to eyeball it, do you? Of course not. So this is what we're going to be doing here. I got my labels, and for the month of January, I'm going to go ahead and insert the minimum function to find out the lowest cell for that range by hitting equals on the keyboard and typing in M-I-N-K-E-Y, no I'm kidding, M-I-N, and you can see it's got it highlighted here, and it says in the pop-up returns the smallest number in a set of values, but it ignores logical values and text. So when I hit the tab key with it highlighted and it pops open the function for me to select a range, if I include January, that's text, it's going to ignore it. But I'm not going to do that. So let's just go ahead and select this range and then hit enter. And is that the lowest number? Let's eyeball it. 10,000, 22, 19, 35. Yep, that's the lowest number within the range. Cool. Now let's do it for the highest, max. Let's do it to the max. equals max. There you go, returns largest value in a set of values, ignores logical values in text. With that highlighted, hit the tab key, pops open the function. You can type it in. We covered that in the previous training video, so we'll keep it simple and to the point here. Let's just go ahead and select our range, hit enter. 35,000, well, just over it. What's the highest here? Yeah, right there, 35,000. It checks out. So if I select the range here and want to be able to see that in the status bar, you can right click on the status bar and it's not highlighted, so I can check minimum, maximum, click off. There's the minimum, 10,000, there's the maximum, 35,000. So this status bar does work with the most simplistic of functions when it comes to the average, minimum, maximum, and sum and count. And so that way you don't have to do it unless you want it static, and you'll always want it there. Otherwise dynamic. When you select it, you'll see it here. So let me go ahead and right click and deselect those. Not clutter up my status bar with all these stats. And then finally, as we learned, you can go ahead and copy and paste your formula as long as you got a pattern that is, well, Excel can recognize with everything tight together. And so when I Control C to copy, come over here, Control V as in Victor to paste, V, Control V, it pastes it. Did it paste it correctly? In other words, is it relative to the position that I pasted it in that it'll update according to that new column, which is column D? This is column C. So let me go back here. There we go, column C. And so when I come over here, there's column D, and as we saw over here, well, that's column F. And you can do that. You can also select it, hover over the bottom right-hand corner to get the autofill handle that we covered in the previous training video, and we'll cover at greater length in a later training video. Click and drag, let go. And in fact, if you want, let me click and drag and select the range. You can do it together. Click and drag to select both, and you get an autofill handle for both. Go ahead and click and drag over to the right, let go, and did it work? Let's select the cell. It's got the minimum function, but for the next column, great. And also for the maximum. D for the next column, and is the maximum 15,000 or just over it? 15, because everything is less than 15, and that's 11,175. Yes, that's the minimum. What you're looking at here is my Dreamforce payroll, and it includes my employees with their hire date, benefits, hours, hourly rate, and their weekly gross. And I want to go over the two functions, the count and count A. The first one, the count, will count up all the cells that contain a number. And so, for example, when I'm looking at the hours here and I want to find out how many people worked this week, instead of counting them up, those cells that contain a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I mean, I can eyeball it here, but you can imagine if you had something larger, then go ahead and use the count function. So type in equals, count, and you can see the pop-up counts the number of cells in a range that contain numbers. So if the range was mixed in with text, it wouldn't count that up, just those that contain only numbers. And so with the highlighted, go ahead and hit the tab key, pops it open, and you've got your syntax with the first argument that you can select your first range, and then if you want to include another range that's not adjacent to it, because if it was, you can go ahead and select both, then hit comma on the keyboard and it emboldens the next argument for another range somewhere else. You can go ahead and click and drag to select it, or go ahead if it's out of your view here, and if you know the range by heart, then go ahead and type in that range, like column Z5 through Z14. In any case, let's just go ahead and keep it as such. Go back to delete that comma, and then just hit enter, and do I get 7? Cool. Now you don't want to confuse the count function with the count down below on the status bar. So for example, when I go ahead and I click and drag and select a range here, what's the count? Well, it's the same 7, but this one says the number of selected cells that contain data, not just numbers. So if I come over here and I select that range, we have a total of 8 out of the 9 that I selected that contains data, as opposed to numbers. So if I go ahead and come in here and edit this, and when I click inside the formula bar to get it into edit mode here, and let's go ahead and hover over the bottom border and move it over, it's not supposed to count up anything that doesn't contain a number, and when I hit enter I get 0. So you see the difference? This will only count up those cells that contain numbers, where the one down below counts up any cell that contains data. So let me hit undo, so you can go back and you can see when I hit undo it's back to 7, which is the count for when I click on it, highlights it, G5 through G14, hit enter, and then like I said, when you select it, what you're seeing down below, it counts up anything that contains data. Now, if you want to be able to do this without using the count function to count up a range that only has numbers in them, well, you can right-click anywhere on the status bar, and instead of the count, you can go to numerical count. Go ahead and check that, and then click off. It's not pulling up because it doesn't see that the range I have contains just numbers and only numbers. So if I go over here and I select these two, how many contains numbers? Just the one. You can see down below numerical count is 1. You can see when I hover over it, number of cells selected that contains numerical data is 1. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and turn that back off. Click off and it's gone. It just includes anything that contains data, the original count here, and not the numerical count. Let's go ahead and do count A. Now the count A function will count number of cells in a range that are not empty. So any data, text, numbers, doesn't matter, it'll count it up. So if I want to be able to count up those people within the company that have benefits and get the total number of employees to find out, okay, what's the number of employees who don't have benefits? I know, you can eyeball it and go 1, 2. They don't have dental or medical or a combination of both. But to show you how the count A works, let's go ahead and below that label there, hit equals and do count. And then there it is. I can just hit the down arrow key to do count A. Counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. With it highlighted, hit the tab key to pop open the function. There's the arguments there. I'm just going to do 1. And go ahead and select the range. Hit enter. We have a total of 8 out of 10 that I selected within that range that has something in it that's not empty. And how many employees do I have? Well, you can see right there, I've got my own numbering system here, 10, because I'm not using the numbers over here. I mean, if I did, I'd be way off, because I got to make room for the title of my workbook here up at the top and some labels in any case. So you could take 10 minus 8 tells me, if I want to get more detailed, I'd type in here, those who have benefits by using the count function contain 8 out of 10. 8 minus 10 is 2. Okay, we need to go ahead and do something to make sure everybody has benefits and not just the 2, and then do some research to find out why these 2 aren't signed on. Maybe they were hired most recently and we just haven't processed their paperwork and or such. Here I want to show you how you can move, copy, cut, and paste your data. And don't let the title of my video, like all other videos, fool you thinking, yeah, I already know the copy and paste thing, because I like to add extra tips, tricks, and shortcuts that I learned over the years to help you become more proficient in Excel. And so having said that, if you already know how to copy and paste, watch the video anyways and see if you can learn something new. So to get started, I want to insert a formula here that's going to, or a function actually, that will add up the range for this employee, the sales that they made from January through April. So to do that, below the label for this column totals, I'm going to go ahead and come up here, click on the Formulas tab, go to the Function Library group, and click on the Auto Sum. It shoots out and it wants to include the employee ID, so I'll just instead click and drag to select the new range, the sales of January through April. And you can see the sum function, and there's the range, C6 through F6, hit enter, and there we go. Now if I want to include that same function with these other rows here, I mean, I could come up here and click on Auto Sum again for that row and then for the next one, but another way to do it that might be more proficient for you is you can go ahead and select the cell as we learned in an earlier training video, and you can either copy and paste the formula, or function in this case, to the other cells, or you can use the autofill handle, which when you have the cell selected that contains the function, hover over the bottom right hand corner over that little, I don't know if you can see it, that green box. When you do it and you get a black cross, there's the autofill handle. You can go ahead and click and drag it down, let go, and automatically copies and pastes the formula into the next cell relative to that new row, because if it was absolute, it wouldn't update and it would stay in the same row with the same reference, and you'd have the same number, 1599, 1599, 1599. So we'll go over that in a later training video about absolute and relative references. And in this case, we're grateful that it's relative, so that way when I go down to the next cell, you can see up here it updates it to the new row, row 7, and that would be row 8 and row 9. Now you can do it that way, or let me click and drag and delete it. You can also copy and paste. Go ahead and select it, and there's numerous ways to copy. You can right click on it, and in the shortcut menu go to copy, or let me click off. You can also use the shortcut keys, Control-C on the keyboard, or go to the Home tab and the clipboard group and click on the copy button. And you can see in the pop-up Control-C. Click copy, you get the marching ants around it to say, okay, This is the active cell that is in copy mode, and when you're ready, go ahead and select another cell that you'd like to paste that formula therein. And so to paste it, you can do it basically the same ways. Right click and you get your paste options, most of which we'll cover in a later training video, but there's the simplistic paste option, and that will actually paste in the formula as opposed to just the values. So if I paste the value, it's going to paste the result of the formula and not include the formula. So if I go ahead and come back here, you can see when I hover over, look up here in the formula bar, when I hover over the first paste option, it includes the formula. You see that? The function, I mean. Well, okay, formula too. I sometimes refer to them as formulas. In any case, it's a function. And then over here, the values. You see just the value, the result of the function? So if you want that and you don't want the function in there, then go ahead and paste values, and then you get other options that we'll cover later on. So you can go ahead and click paste there, or you can come up, let me click off, come up here on the home tab, click on the paste button there, click on the drop down arrow, get more paste options. That includes pasting just the values and not the formula, or you can paste it just the formatting if you had formatting that you wanted to paste and not include the formula or the values, or paste it as a link. So that way, whatever you do in this cell here, it'll update the other cell because that cell will be linked to that cell. And then you can also insert it as a picture. And then the other one is as a linked picture, which means that any changes you make in the original cell, it'll update that picture over there. Of course, once it's a picture, you can't make any changes to it because it's static. The only way it's going to be dynamic is if you go back to the cell that it's linked to and make changes therein. So let's keep it simple. Let's just paste it. Control V as in Victor, the shortcut keys on the keyboard, and it pastes. And then, of course, after you paste it, if you're like, I wish I would have chosen another option. Well, after you paste it, you get that little smart tag. You can click to open it up and choose your other options and actually choose your picture here, either linked or just as a picture. Click on it, and now it's a picture. Click off and click on it, and it selects it as a picture and not as data within a cell. Let me go ahead and hit undo. That will save me. Now it's still in copy mode, so not only can you copy and paste that into an adjacent cell, but if you have more than one cell, you can click and drag and select the range. And if you have other cells that are non-linear, not next to each other, like I want that same function not only available for the camp gear for each employee there to get the totals, but I want it also for the one in UK to get the employees in the UK, their totals there using the sum function. Then hold down the control key and click and drag. And you can see that I got a non-linear selection. Dragged it, and then hold down the control key, click and drag. And then all I have to do is go ahead and do Control V as in Victor to paste, and hey, there you go. Isn't that fun? Let's double check to make sure it did what it's supposed to do. It's got the sum function, but we got to have relative reference to be able to update it relative to its new position. So the row here is 6. What's it going to be down here? Well, there you go, 16. So if I select the cell here that contains the function, it's the same function, but update it relative to the new position, which is row 16. Cool. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the escape key and get out of this copy mode so the marching ants aren't around that cell. Next, how about instead of copying and pasting, we actually move? So for example, I got the totals here. What if I want the totals for the months, like January, so I want to put the label here. You can go ahead and type in the label totals here, or you can just go ahead and copy and paste it, which we learned how to do. But how about if we go ahead and select the cell, hover over the border of it, click and drag it, and put it over here. Well, you'd say, well, wait a second, if you move it, then we won't have the totals over there. True, but if I hold down the control key, now watch my pointer, when I hold down the control key, you see how it converts it, makes it a little bit longer, and you get a plus sign next to it? That means it's in copy mode. So when I let go, doesn't move it, it actually made a copy of it. So if I come down here and do the same thing, select it, click and drag, and I let go, and I forgot to hold down the control key, it actually moved it. Which, congratulations, you know how to move it by clicking and dragging. Hit undo. You can also move blocks of information here or data by hovering over your selection. Get the four-way arrow, click and drag, and move it somewhere else. Okay. Well, because it can't squeeze everything in there, the E means there's extra. So let's go ahead and hit undo. And you'd have to make that column wide enough to be able to view all the numbers. And so cool, now we can see them. So let's go ahead and select it here, hold down the control key, click and drag the border of it, and there we go, we got a copy of the totals there. Now in addition to moving, copying, and pasting, you also have cut and paste. And so if I want to be able to cut a cell, it means it removes the entire contents of the cell, puts it on the clipboard, and it waits for me to go ahead and paste it somewhere else, whereas copying leaves a copy of it, or leaves the original, and allows me to paste a copy of it somewhere else. So we can go ahead and right-click on it and go up to the pair of scissors to cut, and it puts the marching ants around it. So how can you tell if you copied or cut it? It doesn't tell you. The only way to find out is hit the escape key and try it again, and then make sure you remember if you clicked on cut or copy. So if we do cut there, or you can use the shortcut keys, Control X, or you can come up here on the Home tab to the clipboard group, and there you go. There's the scissors, or Control X. So if I go ahead and click on it, marching ants, when I right-click somewhere else, I get my paste options up here, so I can go ahead and paste it. And there's a preview of it before I actually click on it, and I can go, oh yeah, that's where I want it, that's fine, click on paste. Or click on paste in the clipboard group, or you can use the shortcut keys, Control V as in Victor, to paste it. Okay, let's go ahead and come up here and hit undo, and it's still in the cut mode. Hit the escape key. The other thing you can do is you can copy and cut entire columns or rows. So for example, if I scroll up and I want to copy or cut column H, hover over the column header H, and you can see an arrow pointing down. You can go ahead and right-click on it. When you right-click on it, it does a couple of things. It selects the entire column, and it gives you the shortcut menu where you can go ahead and cut or copy it. Of course, if you copy it, gets the marching ants around it. And then if you want to put in column K, right-click on the column K header and go ahead and insert the copied cells. And there you go. Let's go ahead and hit undo. What about cut cells? Let's right-click and go ahead and this time cut it. And if I want to go ahead and let's do it over column E. If I right-click on that, will it paste it over the entire column? No, you can actually insert the cut cells. When you click on it, well, it pushes everything over, but it gives me a warning because, let me click OK, because the cell references are coming back in on itself. So where it says it wants to give us the total of C6 through G6, click on it and it includes the total, and it's like, that's freaky, because to get the total you got to include the total or the function here. In any case, keep that in mind, and it doesn't make sense, but you can go ahead, at least for the cut and copy purposes of the training video, select entire columns. Let's go ahead and hit undo so we don't get into that issue and have those problems. Hit the escape key. But also you can do it for rows. So if you want to go ahead and click and drag 2 rows and right click on the selection in the row header, either row 12 or row 13, they're both selected. You can go ahead and copy or cut it. Click on copy, and let's go ahead and do this. If I right click on row 7 and I want to insert the copied cells, it's going to push everything down too, because I have 2 that I got copied. So it looks at this and it goes, oh, even though you just have 1 row, we have 2 rows that have been copied, so I'll push this down twice. Let's go ahead and insert the copy cells, and there you go. Broke it up, so we've got employee up here, and the other 3 down here broken up by our title and the date. Let's go ahead and hit undo. Click off, hit the escape key. And then finally, I want to go over the clipboard feature, whereas if you've got more than one thing you want to copy from the same place here, so I want to select the range, copy it, and paste it over here, or another part of the worksheet, or another part of the workbook like sheet 2. And I want to do a lot from this area, not just one big glob here, but different parts of it. You can imagine how annoying that would get if I have to select it, copy it, come over here, paste it, select this, copy it, come over here and paste that, or more to the point, on a different worksheet, bouncing back and forth. How annoying. Instead, how about if we go ahead and use the clipboard feature that's found up here on the Home tab. There's a clipboard group. Go ahead and click on its expandable dialog box button. When you do that, there it is. It allows you to copy more than one item. So when you're in an area that you want more than one of these items copied, but not linearly, separately, so like this range here, Control C to copy it, adds it to the clipboard. And if I want to copy that, copy it, and let's say I want to cut it, Camping Gear US, when I cut it, it's not going to remove it because the clipboard's open. When I go to another part of the worksheet to paste it, it'll still be there. So the clipboard overwrites the cut options, so you might as well not cut it. Just use the copy, and I'll show you that in just a minute. And let's go ahead and do the range here and copy. In other words, I'm just adding a bunch of things to my clipboard. So that way, when I have to go to another part of the worksheet or the workbook, I don't have to bounce back and forth because I have everything here that I wanted. Up to it contains 24 items. And the clipboard feature is a Windows operating system thing. So if you open up another application like Microsoft Word, it'll be available there. But I'm moving ahead of myself. Let's just go ahead and focus on this other worksheet where I can go ahead and select a cell and click on the item that I want to paste. Great. There you go. Come over here, click on that to paste it. And Camping Gear US was cut, right? So when I go back to sheet 1, it's still there. So it ignores it, doesn't actually cut it, just considers it as being copied. So if I go back to sheet 2, I can go ahead and select a cell and say paste all. And it pasted all. Well, doesn't look pretty, but it pasted all of them. And then I can go ahead and clear it all and go back to sheet 1 and pick up if I need more than 24 items, because again it only picks up 24 items, and copy another 24 and be able to go back to sheet 2 or other parts of the workbook to paste. And then finally down below you do get the options. You can click on it to see what's available. And by default it's going to show both the Office clipboard icon on the taskbar and the status near the taskbar when copying. You don't have to see that. You can uncheck it. You can also collect without showing the Office clipboard, because without the Office clipboard, when you close it and you copy like February and you paste it, and then you copy March and you paste it, well, if I continue to paste, it's only going to paste the most recent copy, which was March, not everything before. So if I want to collect it as I'm copying without seeing the clipboard, well, then you got to open up the clipboard here and click on the options and say collect without showing the Office clipboard. You can show the Office clipboard when you hit Control+C twice, and you can also show it automatically. Your flavor, go ahead and choose what works best for you. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please look in the description below this video.